Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And Banti, I want to really thank you for that open speech. In some ways, we're different. I have more hair than you do. Also, you said that you become nervous speaking in front of scholars. Speaking in front of scholars doesn't make me nervous at all. But speaking in front of Buddhists, people who really practice the Buddhist tradition and the Buddhist faith, makes me very nervous. Because I'm up here pretending, as one Bai said, pretending to be an expert or a scholar in the Buddhist tradition. And really, I'm just a beginner. Just a beginner. And I really feel nervous speaking to people who are much more experienced, much more wise, much more compassionate than I am. Another way in which we might be different is that you said, and actually followed through on what you said, that you give a short speech. I never give a short speech. I talk on and on and on, so you have to be relaxed and expect me to talk too much. Some of the ways in which we agree very, very much is that, like you, I love Guanyin statues. I think you have more of them than I do. I also have quite a collection of Guanyin statues that I've accumulated over the years. I love my Guanyin statues. Another way in which we very much agree is on the importance of bringing together wisdom and compassion. And I really appreciate, I don't know how to say this exactly, but in my travels, I've had experience of quite a few Theravada monks, which I've met in various countries, though I've never lived in very many countries. And I think you are very special, because you bring together, in a way I don't know anyone else who brings together in such a fine way both the Theravada tradition and Mahayana. You're a Theravada monk who can help with the dress from the robe. But in your mind, I think, there is much more than Theravada Buddhism. There's also the love of Guanyin and an attempt to integrate Mahayana ideas and teachings and Mahayana sensibilities with your Theravada tradition. So I think, I know you're from Sri Lanka, but when I meet you, every time I meet you, it's in Singapore. So I think that you really are Singapore's Dharma Ratna, treasure, the Dharma treasure of Singapore. So I thank you very much for your opening address. Now, I'm here to talk not about Dharma Ratna, but about Guanyin. And first I should say that I always felt a little uncomfortable about using the name Guanyin. I use it in English. There are other possibilities. We could use Sanskrit, Avalokiteshvara. That seems kind of long and awkward for English speakers. But the name of Guanyin in Chinese is really Guanxi. And I think it's a shame in a way that we drop out the world. Guanyin is the one who, I don't know if we want to say perceives, or I like to say takes regard of the cries of the world. And somehow when we shorten the name, we leave out the world. But I think we need to remember that we're doing that. Everyone knows that Guanyin is very, very popular in East Asian Buddhism, in China, Taiwan, of course, Korea, Vietnam, and Japan. Especially in the coastal areas of East Asia, where there were ports. Guanyin was especially popular, and even today you can find many Guanyin in temples in East Asia. But I think that in some ways the importance of Guanyin in the development of Buddhism is still kind of under-recognized, underappreciated, especially perhaps by scholars like me. And especially, even more especially perhaps by monastics, including Chinese monastics, who are, of course, all male. And in general, I think Guanyin is underappreciated by men. There's a little difference when it comes to women's devotion, and I think we should be a little bit more aware of that. There are several reasons for this. I think I've got slides up here to see if I can work this. Yeah. There are several reasons for the relative neglect of the importance of Guanyin, at least in my opinion. Gender is one. As I just indicated, most Buddhist scholars, we've just had a seminar of Buddhist scholars. I organized it and tried to get a little bit better gender balance, but we wound up with one woman out of 12 people. Well, two women out of 12 people. Most Buddhist scholars are male. All Buddhist monks are male. And so those who talk and write about Buddhism tend to be male and tend to neglect Guanyin. Class and social status is another reason for neglecting Guanyin. Guanyin is popular among ordinary people. And not so popular, not entirely unpopular, but not as popular among the elites, including the academic elites. Let's face it, those of us who enjoy university positions are enjoying positions of status and economic status that is above that of ordinary people, especially traditional ordinary people who are mostly illiterate peasants. So we like texts. And that's the third one. Scholars like to read. Well, it's not just a question of liking. It's something you can do. It's easy, relatively easy, to take a text and analyze it where it came from and its history and its influences. Much easier to work with a study of text than it is with ordinary people's devotion. You can't see and read and deal with devotion in the way that you can deal with a text. Another reason is a preference for ideas over practices. Academics, intellectuals generally like to deal with philosophical ideas and analyze them and toy with them and so forth. Much easier to do that in a way, much more, and for some people more fun, more interesting to deal with ideas than it is to deal with practices of ordinary people, with the whole panoply of what we like to think of, I like to think of as Buddhism. Finally, I think there is a matter of the inherited rank of Buddha over Bodhisattvas. And perhaps especially the reluctance in some quarters to recognize Guanyin as Buddha. And in Chinese, Guanyin is almost always, verbally at least, known as Guanyin Pusa, Guanyin Bodhisattva. And that is the relation of Guanyin to Buddha that I want to kind of focus on and talk about today. Please help me remember to use this thing.
seem to be able to make this work.
Okay. As you can see, I'm not very technologically advanced. I don't even own a cell phone. But I should be able to use a PowerPoint presentation. Guanyin, so we're okay? Guanyin plays several roles in Buddhism. Guanyin can be perceived, often is perceived, as a kind of divine rescuer. This comes in part from chapter 25 of the Lotus Sutra, where we're told that actually there's a list of perils with which one can be saved by calling the name of Guanyin. I have a kind of special take on this because I think it is related to the name of the Rider of the Christ of the world. I think it really means if we're compassionate, we can overcome a great variety of perils. But for many people, Guanyin is a kind of God that you can pray to in order to be rescued from various kinds of difficulties. And well, that's as it is. Secondly, Guanyin is a kind of not only a symbol, but kind of an embodiment. As Bhante said, when we sit or stand before a statue of Guanyin, we have a feeling of compassion and of the need for to be compassionate ourselves when we're related to Guanyin. So Guanyin becomes a kind of model for us. The very first time I came to Asia, was to Tokyo, to Japan, I had a kind of campus tour of Risho Kosekai facilities led by the founder of Risho Kosekai. He's now deceased. The founder of Risho Kosekai was Niwano Nikyo. And among the places we visited in Risho Kosekai's headquarters buildings is a large hall like this, about the same size as this, I think, maybe a little bit bigger. And in the front of it is a statue of Guanyin, 1,000-armed Guanyin, with her 42 arms and hands and eyes. And in each of those hands is a kind of implement of some kind, a drum or a text or various kinds of things, which Niwano explained to me. Often people think that these implements are going to be better. I told you I wasn't very technologically advanced. Niwano said, people see these implements as being 1,000 ways or 1,000 instruments or 1,000 tools by which Guanyin can save us. And people pray to Guanyin as they would pray to a god to be saved by Guanyin's help. But I think, Niwano said, we believe that that's not proper. That we really should understand Guanyin to be a model for us. And if Guanyin has 1,000 instruments for helping people, it means we need to develop and grow 1,000 instruments for helping people. So in this way, Guanyin becomes a kind of model for human behavior. Fourth, I think this is four, yeah. Fourth, Guanyin is a kind of patron of women. Just when I was preparing this paper, I read a paper by Dorothy Wong, one of the great Buddhist art historians, in which I really came to have a much greater appreciation for the role of Empress Wu in promoting Guanyin devotion back in the 7th century. And it's been true ever since that Guanyin has been a kind of protector and a kind of special object of devotion for women. And if you go out, one. is for Guanyin in Taiwan, and it's a sign for direction to the women or the nuns' temple, which is a Guanyin temple. And very often in Chinese temples, as you probably know, very often when we have both monks and nuns, there will be campuses divided. There's a men's side where the main figure is Monju Sri Bodhisattva, and there's a women's side where the main figure is Guanyin Bodhisattva. And that's true at Fort Guangchang. Let's do one more. Yeah. Guanyin is especially popular in East Asia. But interestingly enough, I'm from America myself. I live in Japan, but I'm American, and I stay in touch with America a little bit at least. And one of the things that's been very interesting to me is to see how Guanyin has become more and more popular in popular American Buddhism. I think that's quite interesting. Guanyin, I say here, Guanyin is healthy in America. It's important to realize, I think, that in America there are several different forms of Buddhism. Probably, we don't have good numbers, but probably the largest Buddhist organization in the United States is SGI, which is also present here. I don't know how strong it is in Singapore, but it's certainly present in Singapore. Very large organization. And lots of things could be said about SGI, but one of the most interesting things to me about SGI is how diverse it is ethnically. If you go to a big SGI event of any kind, whether it be a party or a funeral or a devotional service, you'll see people from India, people from Korea, people from China, people from Mexico, people from Europe. It's a wide diversity of people, very interesting in some ways. Probably, again, I don't have figures to back this up, but I think it's probably the most ethnically diverse religious group in the world, with the possible exception of the Roman Catholic Church, which also can be, even some local Catholic churches can be enormously diverse. But certainly among Buddhists, SGI is incredibly ethnically diverse. The second largest Buddhist organization in America is the Buddhist Churches of America. This is ethnically Japanese. Of course, some Japanese have married, and there are some non-Japanese who attend Buddhist Churches of America. It's Jodo Shinshu, the true Pure Land tradition that comes from Japan, basically from Shinran. And it is by far, partly because of what Japanese migrated from Japan to the United States in the late 19th century to work on railroads and things like that, and to look for gold. So the second biggest Buddhist organization in America is Japanese Pure Land Buddhism. Another form of Buddhism that's also quite large, but almost hardly ever recognized by scholars and academics, is Chinese Buddhism. If you go to Chinatown in New York or Chicago, less so in Chicago for some reason, but in New York or San Francisco or Los Angeles or Boston, and as I said, less so in Chicago, in larger cities where Chinese people have come together and formed Chinese communities, there are almost always Chinese temples. And in New York City, for example, there are several Chinese temples in Lower Manhattan. Lower Manhattan's Chinatown. So one fairly large, again we have no idea about numbers, fairly large form of Buddhism in the United States is Chinese Buddhism. There are also other ethnic groups with their own temples, especially Korean, Vietnamese, Thai, and some others, where the membership in the temple is partly based on language, on ethnicity. If you go to the Korean temple in Chicago, you better be able to speak and understand Korean. That's okay. Okay. I call this Woodstock Guanyin because this is where I found this Guanyin. But one of the things that's interesting about it is that it's, at least for me, very difficult to determine or detect where it came from, where this style came from. I think it's an originally American Guanyin, but I'm not really sure about that. Then we could move here. This is a Guanyin that I found in Montreal, Canada. Obviously, influenced by Chinese art. It's really a Chinese Guanyin, but very popular way of saying Guanyin. This is a Guanyin that I found in a garden or a park, actually, in Vancouver, Canada. This is what I'm trying to talk through right now. So we have SGI, we have the Buddhist Churches of America, we have Chinese Buddhists, we have other ethnic groups, and we have Zen. Zen, of course, comes from Japan. There are two main schools of Zen Buddhism, but in America, it's mainly Soto Zen, which comes from Japan, which itself comes from China. So Japanese Zen Buddhism is rooted in Chinese Chan. But for various reasons, American Zen Buddhism has come to be understood to be American Buddhism. And very often when you see references to American Buddhism, what they're talking about is American Zen Buddhism. And like these other groups we mentioned, which are ethnically Chinese or Korean or Japanese, Zen Buddhism in America is ethnically European American. They usually would not say that, because the language, of course, is English. It's American English, not some foreign language like Korean or Chinese or Japanese. So we don't think of European Americans as being an ethnic group, even though they in fact are. And so it's this ethnic group that is given the title of American Buddhism very often. Finally, in America today, we have Tibetan Buddhism. And this is an interesting story in itself. It's also popular among European Americans, and for interesting reasons. When the Chinese Buddhist priests or monks come to America, it's primarily to serve the Chinese population there. When the Japanese Buddhist monks or priests came to America, it was primarily to serve the Japanese population living in America. But who are the Tibetan priests going to serve? There is no Tibetan community now. There are a few, but there are basically no Tibetan community in America. So they had to learn English, and they had to teach in English, unlike the Japanese and the Chinese and the Koreans and the Vietnamese, who can use their own native language with their own native communities. The Tibetans had to learn to use the English language to speak to people who were not Tibetan and not in their tradition. And so, partly I think for that reason, Tibetan Buddhism has become very popular in America. It's grown enormously. We have Tibetan temples all over the country, and it's one of the big Buddhist movements in America. So why is Guanyin popular in America among different ethnic groups and different people? And I think, and especially popular among European Americans. Of course, you find Guanyin in Chinese temples and Chinatowns, but Guanyin is not especially popular among Zen Buddhists, for example. But it is popular. It's not popular in the meditation centers of Zen Buddhists, but it's probably popular among the people. And if you look at something like, well, probably the most popular Buddhist publication in America is a magazine called Tricycle. It's very widely read, especially by European Americans, and it has very good articles. But if you look in the back at the advertisements, it's kind of interesting. you find among the advertisement lots of advertisements for Guanyin statues, other things, material things related to Guanyin. So I think there is, and if you travel around and look in places like I was just showing you, in gardens and other places where people display Buddhist statues, you very often find Guanyin. So why is Guanyin so popular in America? I think that one reason has to do with current American rejection of the religion in which they grew up. I don't mean that everybody is rejecting Christianity, but when I was a child, it was true that the priests would tell us that God was loving, a loving God. But that was sort of in the background. In the foreground was a God who was vengeful, angry, and demanded obedience, and who would punish us if we didn't do what we were told to do. If you didn't go to Mass on Sunday morning, you could be punished. And if you didn't do other things, you might wind up in hell, punished eternally. Not just in a Buddhist hell where you're punished for a while, but punished forever. And in fact, we were told that those of us who were not part of the Roman Catholic Church would wind up in hell, for sure. Even infants born who were not baptized would wind up in hell. So the image I had as a child, this is not a sophisticated theologian's view of the Christian God, but as a child, the kind of impression one got was that God was angry, vengeful, and frightening. We had in a church that I attended as a teenager, I actually cleaned the church, vacuumed the carpets and things like that. But there was an area behind the altar rail in which the cleaning boy was not allowed to go because it was too dangerous. And you got the kind of impression that if you went in there, if you went in there at all, I'm sorry, you could go in there with a priest, but if you went in there by yourself, it was like 200,000 volts or something. It was very dangerous. Well, many people, not all by any means, there are many, many devoted Christians in America, but many people who grew up in this tradition, Jewish and Christian, many people who grew up in this tradition, Christians and Jews, were hurt by it. And their hurt persists to this day, and they are looking, many of them are looking for another way to express their own religious feelings and their religious devotion. And so you don't find, actually scholars can find in the literature, but in ordinary life, you don't find a vengeful, angry Buddha, much less a vengeful, angry, Guanyin Bodhisattva. It just isn't there. So Guanyin and Buddhism that Guanyin represents, the Buddhism of compassion, I think becomes popular in part because it's an antidote to the kind of image of God that we were taught when we were children. This, of course, was not inevitable. Avalokiteshvara, the name, the Sanskrit name Guanyin, Avalokiteshvara came from India, along with other Mahayana Bodhisattvas. Any number of them might have become very popular, but they didn't. In the Lotus Sutra, the main textual basis for Guanyin devotion is the 25th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, which sometimes was published and circulated as a separate Guanyin Jing, or Kanong Gyo. And in the chapter just before that, it's the 25th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, the 24th chapter of the Lotus Sutra is about a bodhisattva named Wonderful Sound, or Wonderful Voice. And he has the same powers as Guanyin. It's an earlier chapter, but the idea that he can be embodied in various ways, that he can save people, all of this is in the 24th chapter of the Lotus Sutra. But almost nobody, except of course Lotus Sutra scholars, almost nobody has ever heard of this Bodhisattva. I have never seen a statue of this Bodhisattva. Why is it that he never had any followers, and Guanyin has millions and millions of followers? I don't know. I don't think anybody really knows. We could guess about these things, but it's kind of interesting that Guanyin became so popular, while others who might have did not. And in China, Guanyin became increasingly popular after the introduction of Buddhism in the early centuries of this millennium. And by the end of the 5th century or so, the iconography had become relatively fixed. So this is a little bit unusual, Guanyin, but we can usually tell Guanyin when we find them in the gift shops or the antique shops because of certain features, the water bottle, the Amida in the headdress, or Amitofu in the headdress, and so forth and so on. The willow branch. There are several things that we associate with Guanyin and artists have put into Guanyin paintings and Guanyin statues that help us to identify Guanyin as Guanyin. Say a little prayer for this machine. Did it? Thank you. I've given longer talks about the transformations of Guanyin in China. Basically, I think there are 4 ways in which Avalokiteshvara was transformed into Guanyin. One has to do with being transformed from male. All of the Indian representations of Avalokiteshvara are representations of an Indian prince, a male Indian prince, of course. So Avalokiteshvara is transformed from being male to being, and here I differ from a lot of people. Some people would say from male to female. But I think that's a big mistake. I think that Guanyin becomes both male and female. And we still find in China clearly male representations of Guanyin being made. Let me go through these and maybe I'll find these pictures a little bit later. From male to male and female. From an Indian prince. I think it's important that in India, the bodhisattvas are always represented as royalty. They wear the garments of Indian princes. They have long ears, right? You know why their ears are long? Because they have heavy earrings. Whereas in China, Guanyin takes on the dominant image of Guanyin is as a woman with a white robe. Quite different from an Indian prince. I'm telling you, you need to hurry up. Thank you. I told you I tend to speak long. Well, from on high to what I call lowland. In Indian texts, quite often Guanyin, you can even translate Avalokiteshvara as one who looks down from on high. But in China, Guanyin is typically one who sits on a rock and gazes at the reflection of the moon in a pond. Anything but on high. Guanyin is with the people in something I like to call lowland Buddhism. I don't know what I call it. Yeah, I need to mention that here. And finally, from Bodhisattva to Bodhisattva and Buddha. And it's all of these transformations are perfectly consistent with what's in the 25th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, the Universal Gateway, which can be understood to be a kind of flowering of the Dharma. But let's see if we can do this. Beautiful. One bush. The transformations of Guanyin resulted in many things, but primarily here, the thing I want to call your attention to is a kind of transformation of Buddhism. Transformation of Buddhism, let me be clear about that. I want to say a transformation of Buddhism from much more emphasis on wisdom to a Buddhism that has much more emphasis on compassion. Now, I do not want to say that Indian Buddhism was only concerned about compassion, only concerned about wisdom, and did not have compassion. And I do not want to say that contemporary Buddhism is only concerned about compassion and has no interest in wisdom. But the emphasis is somewhat different. Early Buddhism, and I think today even to some extent Theravada Buddhism, places more emphasis on wisdom than it does on compassion. Whereas under the influence of Guanyin devotion in China and in those places that have been influenced by Chinese Buddhism, under that influence, Buddhism itself has been transformed. I don't mean, 100 degrees, but it's been transformed from a religion primarily concerned about what goes on in your head, which is wisdom, to a concern about compassion, which at least in the Mahayana tradition, compassion has to be embodied. It has to be part of what you do with your body, not just with your mind. And so I think that Guanyin, we can say in a certain sense that Guanyin is responsible for an enormous transformation of Buddhism from a religion primarily of wisdom to a religion primarily of compassion. This involves, it's related from being a religion of arduous meditation to a religion of practice of compassionate living as part of this transformation, from being a religion, an elite religion of educated scholars and monks, to being a religion of common people, of peasants and farmers. All of this in a popular religion, which scholars like to kind of depreciate by calling it a cult, because it's popular religion, not the religion of the educated monastics or the educated intellectuals. And all of these two froms that I'm talking about, these transformations from female to male and female, all of them are not a matter of replacing one thing with another. They're not, maybe we could even say they're not exactly revolutions, but they are a matter of including more than what was included before. So it becomes a religion so that Guanyin becomes, for example, both male and female. And Buddhism becomes more lay Buddhism, lay as well as monastic, and popular as well as elite. All of this, of course, happened in China. So I like to say, and I like to think that, we'll come to this in a second. I like to say that Guanyin, as the embodiment of compassion, is one of China's great gifts to the world. We wouldn't have this idea of Buddhism as a compassionate religion without the developments that took place in China. Let me say a word about that. I'm going to have to skip some things here, as I'm being told. I'm running out of time. Okay. I put this in here to indicate the continuing use in China of male Guanyins. The main figure in this picture is, of course, Amida Buddha, not Guanyin. But in the lower right-hand, your lower right-hand corner, the right-hand side, there's an image of Guanyin. Look at it, if you can see it. In the back of the room, I don't think you can even see. But this is a Guanyin with very obvious male characteristics, including, I suppose, the most common Buddhist symbol of maleness is not a sexual organ, but a mustache. Because not too many women with mustaches. This is a new temple outside of Beijing. The central figure in this case is Guanyin. And again, well, no, in this case, Guanyin does not have a mustache. But look at the dragon princess. I think I have it. Well, this is what's in front of the altar. You see some typical Guanyin statues here. Pretty hard to see. I don't know if you can see that. This is the dragon princess from chapter 12 of the Lotus Sutra. And the dragon princess has a mustache, clearly male. And I asked the monks here why the dragon princess, or the dragon girl, we often say, why does the dragon girl have a mustache? Why is it a boy? Well, it's because Avalokiteshvara of Guanyin in this statue is male. And we don't want any hanky-panky between a male bodhisattva and a dragon girl. So we made the boy, the girl into a boy. I'm going to skip some things that are on your slides. I want to tell one quick story. Some years ago, I did a talk, something like this, I suppose, talking about these transformations of Guanyin, and included the idea that Guanyin in China can become Buddha. And I forget where I gave the talk, but somehow the editor of the Journal of Chinese Philosophy discovered it, or maybe he was in the audience, I don't remember. But anyway, he wanted to publish the paper. But he said to me, you cannot say that Guanyin becomes Buddha. You have to take that part out of the paper. Because everybody knows that Guanyin is Pusa. So of course all the academics do. But just 3 days later, I happened to be in Hong Kong. And when I go to Hong Kong, I love to visit a temple out on Diamond Hill. It's called Qilin. And it's a women's temple in Tang-style architecture. It's a beautiful place. And if you've not been there, you owe it to yourselves. If you go to Hong Kong to visit the Qilin Temple on Diamond Hill in Hong Kong. And I was there about 3 days after I was told you cannot say that Guanyin becomes Buddha. And I went into the gift shop where they had a big, beautiful image of Guanyin, and I said to the clerk, who was a devotee, a follower, a lay, not devotee of the temple, I said to the clerk, who is this? She said, Guanyin Buddha. Very interesting to me. And so I decided that I would not publish that paper with the Journal of Chinese Philosophy, because I believe very strongly that in China, Guanyin does become identified with the Buddha. What she said to me was that Guanyin became a fully enlightened Buddha and chose to remain in this world to help struggling people. But Guanyin is fully enlightened Buddha. people. Because she takes the form of a bodhisattva in this world, we call her Guanyin. And I think there's something very truthful and very important about that, because it gives Buddha, not that Buddha has a vengeful aspect, but it gives Buddha a face of compassion in this world. All right, I'm told that I need to stop somewhere here. It's amazing how quickly the time goes by. Having fun talking to people. So I want to say that Guanyin devotion is much more important historically and in the lives of religious people, not only in East Asia, but also nowadays in America, is much more important than we normally give credit for. And I celebrate this temple for being a Guanyin temple. And I thank you very much for your attention.